Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a stream of Little Learning Machines. My name's Fiona. I'm the community manager here at Transitional Forms, and I am joined by our two lovely co-directors of the game. They'll introduce themselves in a minute, but yeah, that's me. I'm here hanging out, and I'll pass it over to you, Nick.
Hello, I'm Nick Counter. Worked at Transitional Forms for a few years. Been working on this game for, I don't know, quite a while, 2.5 years. But yeah, originally came up, Dante and I kind of originally came up with this idea after training a bunch of really weird AI in a previous project. And yeah, so I kind of worked a lot on the visuals, the UI, and kind of like, general directing stuff alongside with Dante, who you can explain for yourself who you are.
Hey, I'm Dante. I also worked on this game. Did a bunch of the original kind of architecture and concepting. Kind of stepped out of it for a while and then came back and did a lot of programming. Along with a bunch of cool other people, we worked on this game for the last 3 years or so. It's been a fun ride. And Fiona, do you want to introduce yourself, or does everyone know who you are?
I kind of introduced myself. Yeah, my name's Fiona. Again, I am the community manager here at Transitional Forms. I do a bunch of different things here, but mainly for the game. I've been doing a lot of the social content and all that fun stuff over the past couple of years. So yeah, so happy to have you all here. Welcome in. So happy to have you join us for this live stream of the game. That's a little bit about me, but let's quickly go over Little Learning Machines. I'm sure some of you know about it already, but if you're new, Little Learning Machines is a cozy artificial life sim where you train these adorable AI robots to complete tons of different quests and explore their world. So each of these little robots has its own neural network. It is AI. You're training real AI in this game. And yeah, that's kind of the main little segment of what the game is. This game's for pretty much everyone. Like, anyone can play this game if you're interested in learning what can happen when you train real AI robots, such as AI enthusiasts would love this, researchers, educators, parents, and even kids. Like, it's a really cool game that you can enjoy and just have fun with, but also learn more about machine learning and reinforcement learning and how AIs are trained. And yeah, that's kind of the little spiel on Little Learning Machines. Now I think we're gonna dive more into what's the backstory of the game and the narrative about it. I don't know, Nick or Dante, if one of you want to take this one.
Yeah, well, I'll start off. Dante, interrupt me at any point. But basically, we went through a lot of different phases with this, with the story and the narrative as well. But we kind of focused in on the idea of we want to tell a story kind of about these crystals and about parenthood in general, or basically, since it's about training AI and it's hard to train AI, we kind of want to reflect that kind of through the story and then kind of the troubles that you kind of go through when trying to raise a life, or kind of when you've been in that process yourself, and kind of the idea of starting simple and then going through a bit of an emotional arc to kind of cover I don't know if everyone remembers a time in their life when they get to a certain age and all of a sudden it's maybe the world isn't what I thought it was. You get to a certain age and you're I had all these ideas about people and things around me, but then there's kind of it's kind of different, and kind of we want to learn more, but you're also scared to learn more to some extent, and it's kind of reflecting that in the narrative and kind of paralleling that with the idea of these little machines trying to figure out and learn about their environment. So that was kind of the basis idea, and then obviously we just made it in some weird alien kind of fictional world with crystals and robots.
Love it. Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it. So as I mentioned, each Animo is a real neural network, and for those of us that aren't computer scientists, Dante, can you explain what that means and what's going on?
Yeah, so we wanted to give players the most direct kind of representation of a neural network that we could. Each of these like little guys is it doesn't like we don't program these guys to do anything. Like they have a set of actions that they can do. I think if I bring it up, see here. Yeah, so basically we kind of program them like robots. They have like a set of controls. They can move forward, they can turn left, they can turn right, they can turn around, and then they have these like 3 buttons that they press. And when you kind of, let's go back to you can kind of wake up. You can see them take those actions like turn around, turn left, turn back, go forward, speak, go forward, turn right, turn on. So you kind of see them, they're kind of pressing buttons at random. And that's basically kind of like the first step. The first step is you just want to make these little robots. And in the story of the game, you can actually see one of them back here. They're kind of just these kind of like remote controlled robots. They're controlled by some kind of, let's see if we can you can't see the panel right now, but like usually they kind of have like some information about like the software that's controlling them, and then over time that kind of came out of disrepair, so they have nothing controlling them when you first find them, and then over time you kind of imbue them with this neural network, this kind of crystal that's inside them, and that crystal basically converts their vision, what they can see, and then make some choices, and then that goes into like the buttons that get pressed for that robot. And the way that happens is just inside each one of these like kind of like little tiles that you see stacked up here is like a different like type of information. You can go like into it like here. It's like, yeah, so yeah, each one of these tiles is like a little bit of information. Is like, oh, is there water there? Like, what's the height? Is there like some sort of fire? What's the item that's there? Is there like a dog or like another like robot? And then finally is like, is that robot holding something? So all of that information kind of like gets turned into this like large amount of kind of like bits and bytes, and then that's it. We don't actually like transitional forms, like the developers, we don't actually write any logic after that. What's in here is this kind of it's a neural network, which means it's just a connection of little like bits and pieces of kind of weights, biases, and like small math functions that slowly figure out how to take this information and take an action like this that maximizes reward. And in Little Learning Machines, we talk about reward in the concept of love and fear. So we have Bungus here. I'm going to take off Bungus's mask. Let's get my hat. Oh God, it looks so like Bungus is more ready for winter than I am.
I
Same.
love Bungus.
So yeah, we can tell Bungus what it loves. So we can say, oh, you love holding onto the axe. We give it a little bit of love for that so that it learns how to do it, but like doesn't like completely work towards that. And then we can say, you love using the axe to chop down trees. And then we can give it a little bit of fear to say you fear standing still. That'll get it moving so that it doesn't kind of just like spin around and things. So yeah, and then we start training. As you can see, it's already receiving some fear. Oh my God, there's an animation here that they used to cry when they got fear, but anyway. They receive a little bit of fear when they like don't do the things you want. And then
on the turn, like it's like I think what's important is that it's turn based. So every turn they're making that decision as well. And so like every turn that they make that kind of decision, they will receive a reward per turn. Sorry, Dante, I didn't want to interrupt you that way, but I just wanted to make sure that it's mentioned that it's turn based and they're making a decision for the future turn.
Yeah, that's correct. It's a turn-based game. Who'd have thought, right? Like, actually, that's one of the cool things. We made it turn-based on purpose.
Yeah.
In the background, it's running like 100 times speed. This is 4 times speed, but like in the background, it's running at 100 times speed. It's just like pew pew pew. But oh my God, I have wiggle on. This is bad. We'll talk about wiggle in a second. No wonder it's like I was like, why? This is bad. This is like.
Zoom in.
I'll turn this off.
Yeah, and like I just want to mention quickly like why we made it turn-based in the first place. Yes, definitely. Um, uh, we made it turn-based in at first because we worked on a previous project where we were in this our first project that we worked with machine learning. It was an extremely difficult environment. It was insane. They were making it wasn't turn-based, so they were making decisions every frame, Dante, or so every frame with a whole bunch of different kind of things. So basically, that took days sometimes to teach the machines anything, if not just like have them fail. So when we started this, we're like, how can we make them like train faster? And the way to do that was to minimize the amount of kind of decisions they are making. So a turn takes approximately a second, a bit less. And so then in the background when they're training, you know, they can be making tons and tons of those decisions. And since it kind of like lasts over a period of time, so it's a lot more efficient in the kind of observations and the amount of things they can see. Like if you look at the brain of what was his name, Bungus? Bungus? If you look at his brain in the nature panel, like they all have different brains, but if you look in the middle one, all the data it has is kind of like represented at the top, the different kinds of observations it has. And that's like actually, as much as that looks kind of like a lot, and it's actually technically a little bit more than that, it's so much less than it would have to be in another place. But every frame, it needs to kind of consider all of that space and all of that data to kind of like try to learn a bit. I think I explained that a little bit wrong, Dante.
You figured after explaining it 100 times, we'd be more used to it, but no. You're on point. You're on point.
Nice.
But yeah, no, Nick is right. It's turn-based on purpose so that we can do it all a little bit faster. It's weird because like we show this to people and they're like, "Oh, it's pretty slow." They learn really, really slowly, but you'd wince if I'd say that it used to take like 5 times longer to train them to do things. Way back in the day.
Oh yeah, like that's like some of the best. Yeah, some of the best experiences like while making this game was like starting when they trained really slow, and then there was one moment in general where we just like, thanks to Dante and Daniil, another team member, all of a sudden they were like 6 times faster, and we're like, thank goodness, people might actually play this.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Okay, great. So now that we've kind of talked about like what is going on in the game and like what Love and Fear is, can we talk a little bit about like the characters that you come across in this game? I don't know which one of you wants to comment on that, but like who do you come across while you play Little Learning Machines, and why?
So the main kind of like the only kind of real vocal character is Imogen, who's kind of like represents like basically the mother of these like animo. Like every time Imogen's kind of like breaking apart, but Imogen's this like intelligent crystal, and through putting pieces of herself into or themselves into the animo, they can now have a neural network. Outside of that, there's a lot of kind of like world building through the design, but the main things that kind of like what Dante just talked about is the alternatives is what the animo used to be, which are actually called autonomo, and they are not neural networks. They are traditional AI. Like in kind of like you discover them as husks at first when they're just empty and they're kind of trash, because this is kind of like an old kind of somewhat apocalyptic post-apocalyptic world, but very lightly. And so everything's old, everything's destroyed, so there's a lot of these husks around that can also be turned on through the crystals. But then eventually you see these autonomo who are still on, but they're using traditional AI basically, and they've been programmed to do tasks. So they haven't been taught to do tasks. They've been programmed to be like water the flowers or cut the trees. So they're very good at it because they don't need to kind of make decisions on their own. They just have an intention in mind, and that kind of represents kind of the different kind of the AI that we're normally used to generally in video games and stuff, or in general. It's like And so basically what we want to do there is like show the difference. Sometimes the AI that is like hard coded is actually a lot better. It's a lot easier to kind of like code these kind of AIs, but they also lack a personality to some extent, or lack the fundamental kind of like thing that I think Dante and I saw early on, was like there's a little bit of a personality. There's something really beautiful about these, watching them learn rather than watching them just be told what to do. It's a very different kind of feeling. So that's like, so the main characters are Imogen, the Animo, and the Autonomo, and then kind of like the backdrop of maybe like what happened in this world, which you learn more about kind of like as you progress.
Cool.
Yeah, so here we can see like a perfect example. One of the things you get access to early on is you get the ability to kind of summon these like automated, like automated like versions of the Animo. And here, let's give them a couple of axes. You can see that they can kind of like, you can see a difference between like one and the other. This one's just like efficiently going to every tree, whereas this one's just like, I'm gonna go over here.
He still makes mistakes. He still gets paralyzed like every once in a while if he hasn't like seen an area, because like Animo really need to be trained about heights and differences in like the different tools around them. So if there was like a fence all of a sudden, or a couple different kinds of items, it might be paralyzed with fear. So you'll see it like move around, not know what to do because it's confused with what it's seeing. Whereas an Autonomo is just gonna like ignore that. I know how to get to a tree, and I'm gonna chop it. I'm gonna turn left. I'm gonna chop it. So it never is indecisive, which I think is really beautiful. Sorry if I butt into Dante. I got excited.
Oh yeah, like look, this guy doesn't know what to do with these fences.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, the fence is completely. He's never seen a fence before, so all of a sudden, based on all that data that's seeing, it sees a bunch of new things. So it needs to train with that in mind, so that it knows to not get confused. It knows it can move around it. It knows not to just walk into it, or because like it might be trying to walk through it. This is why you kind of have to train. Like one of the hardest things to train in Animo is navigation in general. It's a lot easier now, but it's still a challenge. It's a lot easier because of the different kinds of pieces of their observations that we've added, like the compass. Maybe we should go over the different pieces.
Well, yeah, this Animo doesn't even have a compass set up.
So they're going to be very, they're going to have a hard time navigating, or a harder time navigating larger spaces than say like the harder or the later Animo. So as you kind of move through the game, you unlock new Animo, obviously, but each of them have different brains, and some of them have radically different brains. Some of them use completely different kinds of machine learning, or not completely different kinds of machine learning. That's not true, but they have radically different observations compared to each other, which makes them kind of like way better at some things and way worse at some things. Or training them might take a bit longer because they see a lot more, or have a lot more like a different kind of perception of the world. So every Animo is different in that they all have starting states that their brain is made in, but they're also very different in the types of observations they have. So Dante, yeah, like if you wanted to talk about the observations a little bit.
Yeah, well, before we do so, I'm just going to start. I'm going to start with the compasses, which I think is something that we don't really tell players a lot about it, but they're important.
We will.
Yes.
We're still in early
one
access.
One of the goals in early access is we want to because we try to explain a lot of things through both tutorialization, a little bit through game, mostly like it's like a stack of priorities. Like more than anything, we want to instruct through game design. Like we want to, hey, here's a challenge where you have to use this new tool and try testing it out, but it's quite difficult to do that. I think we often we lay things out, but it's not as like intuitive as we want. So the next thing is we have a little bit of tutorialization, where we have like Imogen pipe up and be like, hey, use this reward, or hey, try doing this, try doing that. But then that often doesn't fail, and then finally we kind of fall back to these like big text dumps that kind of explain things, which is I have to confess, it's not very fun to kind of like read a textbook in a game, but it's the last attempt. You shouldn't like a lot of the stuff we say here is just repeating what Imogen kind of says in character, but in a kind of way that you can always come back to and look in. But yeah, so anyway, so we're still working on smoothing those edges out during early access, especially as we see some of the analytics come in and see where people get stuck. But let's do some training. So this guy already kind of knows how to chop things with axes. Not this guy. It was Bungus. Sorry, I don't know if you saw like my naming scheme, but I have Chungus, I have Dungus, Fungus, Gungus, and Jungus, and I'm very proud of all of them.
Won't be confusing at all.
No, of course.
Love it.
So, yeah, like just kind of having like Dungus hanging around. Let's. I just did a little bit of training at the beginning, so it wouldn't run into the water, but. Let's reset its brain. This is, I think, something that we need to call much more attention to is just resetting the brains, because you can get them stuck. You can get them to like only do a certain thing. So this is like a really important aspect of it. So now that we've reset it,
you can't teach old Animo new tricks. Like
you got to be careful about it. But once they like know that something is bad, they don't do it. And then it's hard to get them to like forget that it's bad. So the compasses are a good kind of way to kind of see things that are kind of far away or things that are important. So for example, we want Dungus to be able to look at like trees. By the way, like there's like a whole bunch of different types of trees. And then let's also make it look at obstacles, and then let's make it look at any other animal, and then let's make it look at I don't know, dogs. Yes. So what this means is that if we go back to, let's go to the main island. That's a good big place to check it out. Let's get rid of all these guys. Pew 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 pew. And let's bring back Dungus. Dungus is here. Cool. So if we look at its vision, Dungus can't. Oh, wake up. Of course, it doesn't have vision and sleeping. You can kind of see in this kind of square around it. But if we take like a fence and put it over here, you'll see that one of its compasses will let it see that. It should let it see that fence. Oh no. Well. Oh right. Sorry. I think I know this bug. It's a small bug. Just got to start training it. But anyway, yeah, it'll see like fences that are kind of far away from it. The closest fence to it. It'll also see like the closest trees to it, and it'll also see the closest like fences to it. So let's put an axe down. Yeah, and I think that's it. I think what else we have? I would look at.
Well,
access trees. Oh yeah, what's up?
Yeah. If we train this a little bit, then it'll be able to. It's like once it starts training, then it will be able to see it in its in like its further place. So currently, it can't. It doesn't see anything. I think that's a little bit, but like outside of that vision. But when it is, when it can train with that, or when it does train with that, you'll see that it can see the vision way outside of its normal little space. Which is really important because like when we were first kind of like we have like some much harder say crystal collecting quests where like it's way out of their vision. So like the idea of like trying to get it, like it can take really intelligent decisions within its vision, but then since it knows nothing outside of it, it doesn't even, you have to almost have like basically really train it to be like trying to move around in a smart way, or just like wait for it to by chance get closer and closer to when an item is in its vision. So a compass will help because like it's not like the exact same kind of observation as something that's really close to it, but it'll know the general idea of it, so then it can like move its way towards it if it cares to. If it like only if it's been trained to like want to go like towards that thing. It could be afraid of whatever that thing is, and it'll want to be away from it as well.
Yeah. So one of the things, if we have time, like I'll be honest, I don't know if we'll have like that much more time in early access to do a whole bunch of stuff, but it would be nice to kind of see a little arrow underneath the animal pointing towards each one of these compasses where it's like pointing. One thing that Nick said there that's like really important is that the compasses themselves don't really like you have to train with them. They don't work off the bat. It takes some time for the animal to learn what a compass does. But one cool thing you can do is you can change the compasses after you've trained the animal, and you end up getting they end up like having behaviors that are a little bit like you can kind of control their behavior a little bit more like that. It's advanced. It's difficult to pull off like effectively, but it's a little thing you can do. Yeah, so anyway, we were talking about like observations of the different like brains. You can see this one has, oh yeah, here we go. This is what we kind of wanted to do, like a little arrow pointing in the direction of the different things. But on top of that, this Dungus, this yellow guy, can kind of see this area around it. It's out of these three, they're basically very similar. These three are like basically very similar, but then this third one is the one with the most kind of information it's receiving. So it's kind of the most powerful out of these three, but it takes a little bit longer to train. So yeah, that they kind of all operate by seeing this big like stack of information, and it's like a lot of data that it kind of processes. It's kind of like looking at an image by its pixels. The later ones, the ones that have this kind of like gradient type dealio, they actually have like a second neural network that produces like a gradient of like all the kind of like this stack gets kind of reduced to a single tile. So you can see that their kind of observations are like smaller than these ones. So like fungus has to deal with a lot less information when it's making its choices, because that information is kind of pre-processed by like a second kind of like network.
So it's a much more
cool.
general. It's like a much more generalized area, like a generalized area. But because it's more generalized, and it's less. We can often make those visions much bigger. Like if you go back to its actual vision, like you can see that that's a much larger vision. I think it's a 9x9. So that's a lot more and potentially a lot faster, but better for kind of like more general behaviors. Like what would you say, Dante, that this like this is called convolutional, but what would you say that is like the benefit of having this kind of vision?
Well, as you said, they can see much further, but then they can also recognize patterns in space. So, like, they can recognize, like, oh, that's a big house over there, or that's like a big chunk of trees over there. So, if it has to make a decision between going to, like, if it wants to chop trees and there's like a big chunk of trees over here and a small chunk of trees over here, it'll be better at choosing to go to the big chunk of trees rather than going to like the smaller one. They can recognize kinds of patterns in space a little bit better.
And then the only the other kind of element to this, which is also later in the game and a bit more advanced, is the attention, the final different kind of observation, which is kind of the same as the original observations. If you want to show maybe like one of the last two, Dante.
Yeah. I just want to watch Dungus a little bit. It's like I think it's one of my favorite things in this game, and I don't know. I don't think this is like a fun time for a lot of people. It's just kind of watching them as they learn, because that I think is like.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but we can't see him because our faces are covering him. Can you like shift down slightly? Like the top section of the screen. There, yeah, beautiful. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay. No, it's good. It's good. As you guys can tell, Fiona's a professional streamer.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think that's like that was like one of the kind of like earliest thing is like we would spend our like hours watching these things, or at this point thousands of hours watching these things learn, and like and there's like something addictive to them. But yeah, as far as like, so this guy's doing really well. So as you can see, one thing we haven't really covered too much, which I know we should, before we go too deep into brains, or even though we already did, was just like the love and fear, and just like what that means and how you do that. So fundamentally, you have these fresh brains, you have positive feedback and negative feedback, and it's like a ratio, as you can see in this graph. And so you can get lots of positive rewards for some things, like a little bit of positive reward for something specific, or same with like a little bit of or a lot of negative rewards. And that ratio kind of is the key kind of strat to playing this game, is understanding like how much reward to give it, how much fear to give it, how like to not give it too much fear if you do it at all, and basically how it's trying to optimize within that space of love and fear. Is that fair enough, Dante? I feel like we looked over that a little bit. Like we can
and
oh
that's where that's where we kind of, that's why we wanted to make it a bit of a game instead of just like a tool. It's just there's like so many little tricks to kind of learn over time. One of the yeah, like most of the things you can learn with just love, right? Fear is really for like fine tuning, and in fact that's actually what I would recommend, is always start with love. That sounds like profound, but it's
never start with fear, and never have more fear than love, or you're going to
That's a good life motto. I just want to say.
Yeah, always less fear.
Imogen says this like 100 times during the tutorial, but then like in the analytics, like it's just like player have like 100 fear, like always, and it's just like
no, they're gonna be paralyzed. Yeah. So
for example, here one thing that, and I think we've mentioned this in previous streams, one thing that like, okay, it's pretty good at like chopping down trees. What if you just fear being okay? Like, what if you just fear being alive?
That's called anxiety.
And this is one. We're literally giving them anxiety.
Streaming.
So one of the. Oh shoot! Okay, give me a second. Let me just. One of the. So this is a complicated system. It requires like a little bit of thinking here, because like we're telling it the simulation will end when you've chopped down all the trees. So the only way to minimize this fear is either by jumping in the water, which it can do, but then it won't get any of these rewards, or it can chop down all the trees. So in fact, in order to make sure it like prioritizes chopping down trees, we're gonna give it a small like reward for chopping down. Sorry, a much bigger reward for chopping down the tree. So now what this is going to do is it's going to like prioritize finishing the simulation, like making sure the simulation like resets over time. It won't do it right away. So this should be enough. But then you can see that in this way, we're kind of like giving it a little bit of fear to penalize it for like wasting time, which is very capitalist. But anyway.
Wow. It's true.
But you're not going to get a stream without me saying that. Okay.
And I think like, so once it gets its first checkpoints, you'll see that it's probably going to collect. Are you at 200? So it'll probably collect 200 fear if it doesn't cut down all the trees, and so which it almost did, but so it seems like it is either chopping down every tree every playthrough, because it says 196, or it just happens to fall in the water at some point, which I really doubt at this point. But you have to be worried. You always have to be worried about that, because they will, if your graph starts seeing weird things, like if you start seeing all of a sudden it's like, oh, like if it went from 200 all of a sudden down to like say like 20 or something, that means that it's probably not like cutting down all the trees in 20 turns. It's probably learning that it needs to just jump in the water and end the session, which is like the worst thing for your ammo to do. But like in this way, now that it's at 192, you'll slowly see that number going down. It's trying to optimize against getting a little bit of fear every turn. So in an ideal world, it will so this is gonna really make him mad. But in an ideal world, it'll get down to the smallest amount of fear, because that's the smallest amount of turns it can take to succeed at its goal, which is often good for certain kind of things, but it can be also something that means like extreme over optimization. And this is kind of like where wiggle comes into play. I don't know if we want to get too deep into wiggle, but basically in a simulation like this, if you are not changing where these trees are or anything like that, if you're optimizing an animo to do this, it's not going to recognize necessarily or even learn what to do in a dynamic way. It's going to recognize a pattern of movement. And so as soon as you put that animo somewhere else, it's going to try to use that pattern movement that it knows is optimized rather than something that is more general and understanding of the world around it. As soon as that tree that it expects is going to be in front of it that first time isn't there, it's it's going to like have memorized basically its button mashing code. Is that safe to say, Dante?
Yep.
There you go. But he's doing amazing. It's
I mean, it's constantly getting like, it literally feels like speed running. It's constantly beating like its personal best.
yeah, it is
Like,
speedrunning for sure.
We gotta get like, we can edit this to a summoning salt type like like video. But yeah, like now it's like consistently getting like all 12. Well, not really consistently. It was getting them, but it actually went in order to reduce the fear. Its efficiency in chopping went down a little bit. So there's a lot more simulations that are ending faster. There's also situations like this where it can't actually chop down this tree because it's too high.
Yeah, so it could
and
never.
It doesn't know.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
this is due to the wiggle. It's like the wiggle is unpredictable to some extent. It will produce things like that will kind of defeat the purpose of it. But that's also good for it to learn to some extent, to maybe like learn to move around or do something else.
Yeah, it needs to learn when a tree is unreachable.
Wow,
Look at this guy.
that is a speed run.
They're good.
Oh, there we go. This is a pro. This is definitely a pro.
Yeah. So
wow.
I really like this like fear being okay, like with like a long simulation time as a way to kind of like speed run training, but you don't have to use fear to get a speed run, because like if we remove this thing and we just say you have 50 steps to chop down all these trees. It's only like, I don't think it can chop down all the trees in 50 steps. Oh, okay, way to prove me wrong. Oh no, I ran out of time.
No, it's doing pretty good.
Like, it's barely enough time to chop down like most of the trees. So if it wants to maximize its reward now, it needs to be able to do it in the most efficient way possible. And like again, and here's where we really get into the meat of it's a neural network. It's like looking at these, like it's looking at this kind of from like this top-down perspective. I don't think we have top-down in the cloud, but it's kind of looking at things from like this top-down perspective. And it's choosing what direction to move, like what actions to take. It's like, okay, I gotta pick this up, I gotta chop this down, and then like my arrow is pointing that way, and it's like it's consistently making like local choices that hopefully lead to like a better solution overall, and it's getting better and better and better at that. And like that.
I was gonna say, like, but I want like make that clear that it's thinking about its next decision, but it's not thinking about the future of its decisions to some extent. Is that is that a good thing to clarify, Dante, or is that too silly?
That's exactly it. One of the things that like Daniil, like, and God bless Daniil, he's honestly like such an advocate for like better AI. But like one of the things he really wants to do is he wants to give players the option to kind of turn on memory, because right now these agents don't have memory, but they could. There's like a neural network feature where they can have a little bit of their brain kind of set aside for like remembering important things, and you can use that for like future planning. Like there's a lot of like cool things you can do. So and to kind of give that note, if we used like one of the bigger, I think number 4, which is the green guy, which we don't have here because if we unlocked them, it would spoil some of the story for our stream watchers. But like their vision is like really big. It would probably be able to optimize the speed run a lot better. But it would take longer to train, and we know you guys are here for a short time, not a not to watch like an hour of training for a single animal. But yeah, I mean, I think this is as about as optimized as I think it can get. 8, like it went up from like 6 to 8, and I think that's kind of where it's been hovering. I don't think it can get much better at this.
Can we try this in the real world with it one tree far away to just revisit like how the compasses work?
Yeah, sure.
Just like because I think so I just want to revisit that because this was something that we got in like quite late into the development process to actually work, and I want to see if it actually like. I know it works, but I wonder how well it will go. So he's got to get his axe and he's got to go to that tree. That used to be impossible for them to do. If I'll be surprised if he does it. No way.
Oh.
So it has an idea that it needs to get over to that other end, but he's never trained with Imogen.
Well, kind of. This is like Imogen and fences are fairly similar.
Yeah.
But I do think it's kind of no, it's never seen like a stack of fences like this.
Yeah.
Which I just want to point out, like while we're watching this happen, if anyone has any questions, feel free to huck them in the chat now. We'd be happy to answer them and chat through anything you might think of. But we're just gonna keep chatting otherwise. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. So he's in this like space where he's never seen this before, and he's been confused, but he'll get he's gonna chase this tree. Yeah. So he's definitely knows what he wants to do, but is let him get it, Dante. Just let him get it.
Take it away from him at the last second.
Or will he actually get it? Oh, see, like he's pretty optimized. This is like this. I would consider this a very smart animo. Like you can get smart animo, but it's like you have to be to get a smart animo that uses like 2 items well is like legendary. Like they're capable because of their small brains. Like they're only capable of so much, but that is like in a lot of ways kind of represented by like the way you train them in the process in which you train them. And like early on, it's kind of like early childhood development to some extent is like there's a lot of really important kind of steps within its like first kind of like trainings and stuff, or the first kind of curriculums that you use that like will probably affect its future self. So I think to truly get like a really smart animo, you got to like treat it properly from the very beginning.
Fair. We have a question. Have you made any fun mini games for your animo? Thank you, Silver, for asking. Take it away.
The whole last part of the game. I know it's a long game. I know it's hard.
It's hard.
I appreciate, like, I've been looking at the analytics like every day. I can see like how people are moving through the games. I appreciate y'all trying, but if you get to the end, there's items specifically made for like mini games, because that's what we want to. Originally, what we wanted to do is just give you guys a sandbox where like you can have all sorts of like kind of like fights and stuff. One of the things that we have is we have these like snowball heaps. Spoiler there. And like there's a cool thing you can set up where you can have Jungus and Gungus. Gungus, that hat is ridiculous. Please.
Don't forget.
I love that.
We
That's
can't
my
see the top
favorite
of the
hat.
screen. Shift it slightly. Thank you.
Oh.
Bless.
Yeah, no zoom in.
Okay, look, they're both wearing head protection. This is important. Actually, Gungus, let's give you the real head protection. Yeah, so once you kind of have the setup, you can just like get them to fight. Which we wanted to make it so that it's not a violent game. We don't want to like train AI to murder things, but like you can get them to like, hey, you love grabbing a snowball. Each of you, what you really love is you love just throwing a small snowball. That's really, really good. And then what you really, really like is Yeah, small snowball. You really like hitting hitting specifically Gungus
Yeah.
with the small.
Yeah, plus 100 for hitting Gungus itself. Yeah.
Jungus has no compasses. Oh yeah, this is the weird one. It
Yeah.
just has like
This one,
huge vision.
so this is the most insane vision ever. Basically, that's a network that only sees height. It doesn't see any items or anything. So that's like represented in the purple. But what it can see is it can see 20 of the closest items around it, which is very weird. It means it doesn't see it like in a square. It just like if there's 20 items around it, it'll see all 20 of them at any distance. Which is it can be really smart. But also is very hard to train, I would say. it's like elite animo. While Dante's kind of like starts this one, my favorite is like it's more of a hidden. I don't know if it's a spoiler item, but it's the bat is my favorite, one of my favorite items. So the bat is a way of just hitting things away. It pushes things along line. So you can definitely set up kind of like sumo wrestling match where first one to knock the other into the water wins. I think that's like a top-notch mini game. So silver, so it doesn't see terrain. It only sees terrain with its grid. That grid that we showed, like I think it was 16 by 16. It sees the terrain, so it sees the height basically. So it can see that in a normal traditional kind of grid view. That's huge. And then outside of that, anywhere within that space or outside of that space, it can see basically a stack, kind of like a normal grid sensor would be, which is like it can look at that wherever that item is, it like knows where it is. Is that fair, Dante? Because it treats that item very specifically. It's not like a compass.
Yep. Yeah. It's looking at a huge thing. Oh no, they're learning specifically to just throw them the second they grab them. Oh, well, I guess, yeah.
Takes time to learn.
But yeah, it can. Oh, dude, it hit once, like one time. Like that's a very small reward for a plus 100. Oh, it's slowly. Oh my god, it is learning to throw them at Jungus.
These are like advanced favorites, so you have to be patient with. You also be very careful your level setup, and also you have to watch, especially when you have like two animo training at once, because they have different visions and stuff. They will learn at different rates, so you might have to like train one a bit like without the other for a little bit to just like fine tune it. So like there's a lot of it's quite the puzzle, but it's like a puzzle without a particularly right answer, which is very interesting. There's best practices, but there's not actually like proven best. Like we have our best practices because we've trained them so much, but I would go out and say that a player could come up with potentially better ideas than us, and that's kind of like the whole idea of the game in general. Is that we've given this kind of sandbox, especially by the end when you've unlocked all these items. We've given this kind of space so that players that enjoy training these animo can actually become better than us, and then actually like see like how smart they can actually be, like how good at these kind of like mini games can they be, and that would be like the most satisfying thing ever, I would think. All right, these guys are doing it.
They're killing it. They're getting there.
I think so.
They want
so
to.
And so there's snowball, getting them to play with the ball, together with the dogs. We also have some, I don't know how many things we want to do, but paint is really cool. Paint's a really fun thing.
Do you want me to spoil the later islands?
No, I don't. Well, like basically, there's like fun islands at the end for team.
Well, they're in the
yeah, they're in so basically like up until like about midway through the game, like quests are basically like solo quests, but then later in the game you receive quests that require 2 animo to complete, and eventually more than that. So then you have to have them cooperate or work together to kind of quest, which is hard, but very satisfying when you do it. So say someone really enjoys playing this game and is super interested in what's the next step for someone who wants to know more? I think that's a really cool question. I think like Dante would be the best person to answer that. Like if like
First of all, maybe you already have an interest in AI. That's cool. But if you found that you love this because you're playing this game, that I'm not saying that's what you said, but like that would make me very happy. But actually, this for what it's worth, the kind of work that you do as a player in this game. Oh my God, they're just throwing. They're throwing.
They've hacked it.
They've hacked it. We gotta change these rewards now. Now we gotta make it so that they only throw at each other. But sorry, just to get back to Verindy, this is exactly the kind of setup that you do if you're training your own agents. Actually, Daniil came to us after spending like a couple of years just kind of training his own agents. If you like game development, Unity has like this cool little like system called ML Agents that lets you kind of create your own little game and kind of the same way we've set them up here. You set up their observations, you set up the neural network, and you set up their actions, and then you can watch them learn, and then you can kind of develop a little tiny game like Snake or something, and then watch your guys learn as they slowly kind of get better at the game you're making. So that's where I would do it in a practical direction. If you want to learn more about machine learning, it's never too late to take machine learning at your local college or university. It's a little heavy on the math, but if you want to learn more about like the theory of how these things like work under the hood, it's always a community college or like local universities like continuing education are a great like resource. And then, but don't get me wrong, there's actually like a wealth of like YouTube videos that kind of like explain how any of this works. So if you don't want to kind of like pay to go sit at a college for like a couple of hours, like there's more than enough on like YouTube to learn this kind of stuff. I know like Stanford has their courses online, like Nando de Freitas has like his course on machine learning and reinforcement learning like completely available. So actually, you know what this means is that I should probably set up some sort of resources page and we should put it on our website.
I was gonna say first thing is just like reach out on Discord because we're in Discord and we can let you know.
Yeah, please
if you have ideas of things you want to try, like please ask us. We'd love to like put you in a certain direction or anything because I think the whole point of this game is like this is machine learning, but this is like we've tried to make it accessible as possible through an interface, and like even in doing that we had to include, we didn't want to have to include a graph, but the graph's the most important thing in the game. But basically like to Dante's point, is like this game and then another interface which was Unity's like a kind of like a more intense user interface using ML agents, but then past that I think you have to get into or anything like that, Dante, or what are you talking like past Unity?
No, I mean like using AI, like using reinforcement learning is much simpler than kind of making it. So like it's basically kind of, that's why we made this game, because like anyone can do this. So I strongly encourage you to kind of like make your own little simulations. There's, as Nick said, there's people here on our Discord, but then there's also the reinforcement learning Discord that we can link to. And it's full of just people who try cool stuff all the time, and definitely worth it if you want to give some things. Also, there's in your local installation of little learning machines, there's some Python code, and if you want to mess around with it, there's nothing stopping you from doing it. You can always like delete that folder and it'll reinstall itself the next time you run little learning machines, but you can mess with that too if you kind of want to look at the way that that's written. And if you need help, just reach out on Discord. We're kind of just sitting there all day. So we're here. We're in Discord right now. Well, unless you're watching.
We're
literally here. We're
yes,
sitting
that's true.
at the same spot.
Okay, I'm gonna jet in because we've reached the end of the time. If there's any I know it's flown by all of a sudden.
Wow, I didn't realize.
Any final
I did notice
notes?
it's getting dark.
Nick and Dante, any final notes?
Final notes. I think it'd be lovely to go to like we're gonna try to do more of these and get deeper into some of these concepts and train some more things. I still have a lot of behaviors and that I want to see them that I still haven't proven to myself that could exist. So it'd be fun to kind of start doing that. And then please, yeah, just reach out if you have any questions and we're still in early access, so we're still trying to make things tighter. We're trying to explain things more. There's so much happening in this game, so knowing how to explain it without it just being a wall of text is really hard. But that's so thank you for your patience, and also like if you have feedback, then now's the time because this is the time that we're able to update and make these like updates and make it easier and better.
Totally. Alrighty, folks. Well, thank you so much for. Oh,
Oh,
sorry,
Dante.
Dante. Do you have anything to say? My bad.
Thank you all for playing this game.
Yeah.
I hope it's fun. I hope you train some cool behaviors. I hope it's I hope you feel powerful and that you can make them do whatever you want with a little bit of patience and ingenuity. So, yeah, that's all they're hoping for.
100%. 100%. Yeah, so again, echoing everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today, downloading the game, hanging out. We really, really do appreciate it. We did today was like a quick, all about LLM stream. We covered what the game's about, the backstory in it. We talked about different training options, different brains in the machines. We talked about a lot, which was awesome. Yeah. So thank you, Nick and Dante, for taking the time to come here and chat about it. I always love listening to you both talk about it. It's very inspiring, if I do say so myself. Yeah, so we will be doing more of these in the future. Dates will be announced in our Discord and across our social medias, like this one. So stay tuned. I will update with those. And with that, thank you again so much. And if you're enjoying the game, please let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your feedback and your thoughts. And if you really like it, you could drop us a review in Steam and give us your honest, or if you don't like it, give us your thoughts. We want all the thoughts there too. So please give us a review. We appreciate it so, so, so much. And just appreciate you all in general. And with that, we're gonna close out for the day. So thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Fiona, for hosting as well.
Of course. Anytime.
The best. Awesome.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.